Okay, welcome
Cool.
everyone to the latest episode of the Contrast Podcast. Today we have our guest, Luke Truman from the UK.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Chillin', chillin'.
Yeah, feeling, it's been a pretty dark night in China right now, Hangzhou. And yeah, we're about to do a good talk right now. I'm excited as usual.
Yeah, man, I'm
Yeah.
excited too. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. So, why don't we start first? Luke, could you introduce yourself? We talked a little bit about this already, but just like basic rundown.
Yeah, so my name's Luke. I'm born in the UK. I guess I'll go from like the language perspective because I think that's what we're here to talk about. So I was, monolingual most of my life. But when I was in university, I played table tennis for the team. I was president of the society. I met a lot of people from Hong Kong. Started dating my current girlfriend still of just over 6 years now from Hong Kong. And then noticed I was going out with her friends and stuff, and we were like hanging out and chatting and stuff. So I started trying to learn Cantonese a few years back. Studied that for a couple of years, and then after that, I kind of got a bit more interested in just Chinese languages in general in Asia. So I started learning Mandarin, and then went to Taiwan for a year. That was absolutely incredible experience, and yeah, that brings me to more or less where I am now. So now I'm trying to learn Mandarin and not forget my Cantonese, and try to improve them both hopefully, and dabbling a little bit in like classical Chinese and some stuff like that. But yeah, I have a small channel about languages and mostly kind of focused on Chinese and that sort of thing.
Okay,
Ah,
cool.
interesting. As how one famous fable goes, everything starts with love.
Yep,
So,
that's right.
the question that I had, before before this whole show, it was about motivation in learning not just Chinese but a foreign language. And now, from my understanding, because you have a girlfriend from that part of the world, that what drives you, to actually acquire that language and kind of, reinforce you to do so.
Um,
So, is it the truth, right? Like, love, basically, that's the only or a few things that could, help you to kind of keep going. Do you agree with that, Luke?
well, I think yes and no, maybe. So I would definitely agree that that was, because of my relationship and stuff, that was the original spark. It's what's caused the interest, and being surrounded by Cantonese and not knowing what was going on and kind of feeling left out of the group was the initial reason for starting to learn. So I think for me, motivation is a very, let's say, fickle thing. It comes and goes in waves. So for me, when I first start learning a new language, and I've experimented with a few so far, not all to very high level. I did Spanish for a few months, didn't get to very high level in it, but I did it for a few months anyway. And I normally like start off with like a bit of an interest in the language, whatever the reason is. So with Cantonese, it was because of my girlfriend and her friends. With Mandarin, it was more just from an interest in the culture point of view, and that kind of gets me going. It gets me to start, and then when you start learning, I feel like in the initial period, everything's so new, everything's so exciting, and you progress so quickly. It's almost like the honeymoon period of learning a language. But then, not too long after you start, things start to slow down. Things get more difficult. You start to jump into harder content. You don't understand anything. You try to speak to people. You don't understand what they're saying. You try to phrase stuff. You get it wrong. And all that you start having all these problems, and that's when it starts to get a bit more difficult. So what I like to try and think about it is at the first you kind of get motivation from some external source, and then after that, when your motivation starts to dip down, by the time that is, you want to try and build up some solid habits so your routine carries you forward. And then through maintaining these habits, these good habits, then you're going to notice some sort of improvements with your results. And when you get better, you go, oh wow, if I put in half an hour a day and I saw these results, well maybe if I put in an hour a day, I'm going to get even better results. So then maybe 2 hours or 3 hours. So it's kind of like the more you put in and the more you see results, the more fun it becomes, and you kind of get like addicted to that loop and wanting to get better. So I think it definitely started with like romance for me, but it's not necessarily the whole picture. And then when I started learning more about it, I got really interested in, let's take Cantonese for example. We've got Cantonese movies like Ip Man, Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, and that sort of thing. It was so much fun, and I just wanted to like keep on going.
Is Ip Man Cantonese? Do they claim that movie?
Yeah, I mean, Ip Man's from Hong Kong. He was Bruce Lee's teacher, and the four films are all in Cantonese.
Wow, I'm
Interesting.
sure, the Beijingers are gonna be a little upset about that. Like, oh, Hong Kong is mainland too. But
Well, I mean, like the films that I've watched were in Cantonese anyway. I think they've been dubbed into Mandarin, but the original audio for the one that I'm thinking of was Cantonese. Not to start a political discussion or anything.
Interesting. So, how long have you been learning? 6 years? Traditional Chinese?
No. So I was dating my girlfriend for maybe about 2 years before I started learning, and then when I graduated from uni, I started a job, and about that time, I was living in quite a quiet village, didn't really have much else to do, so I thought I might as well, try and put my time into something useful after work. So I started doing that. So I studied Cantonese for about 2 years, and then did like a 6-month break from Chinese in general just to try and learn a bit of Spanish, and then didn't find it as fun, so then went back and decided to start learning Mandarin after that. So we've been doing Mandarin for about a year and a half. So all in all, about 3.5 years for traditional characters at least. But actually, for the first 9 months of when I was doing Cantonese, I didn't touch the characters at all. I was just focusing on spoken.
really, wow, that's interesting. Yeah.
I'm not sure I'd give the
So,
same advice if I did it again, but maybe we can talk about that later.
yeah, so how would you assess your current language level? Is it like high, like
For
advanced level
for Cantonese or Mandarin?
of both?
Okay, so for Cantonese, I think I got to a decent level. I wouldn't say it's like super advanced or anything like that, but at least I got to a level when I could like, hang out with friends and like understand like a lot of movies and TV if it wasn't too complicated. A lot of the historical dramas in Cantonese I struggled with, but like the more modern dramas I could tend to understand okay, and I could hang around with my friends and generally join in conversation. But when they started talking about politics again, I got lost with that. With Mandarin, it's a lot better. I can read okay. Like I can, generally most modern books I can pick up and read like paperbacks fine. I don't understand all the words, but like the ones I don't know doesn't tend to get in the way of comprehension of the general plot, so I can kind of get through that. Historical dramas, I've started getting in a bit more. I've started learning a bit more about classical Chinese, so I think my Mandarin is definitely a lot better. It's easy for me to find like content that I can understand the majority of it. Like most things I'd turn on, I'd understand probably most of it, but it's still easy to find things I don't understand. Like I was playing like Cyberpunk in Chinese recently, and I think I'd be finding that quite difficult. And tried listening to a podcast about chemistry. I didn't understand like half of what they were saying, so it's still very topic based. But I feel like I've got at least quite a solid base now.
Ah, interesting. I want to kind of unpack, your first statement, and I'm just questioning myself, yo, where the fuck my honeymoon with this language? I'm like, I just like, yo, is it real, man? Like, does this thing like really exist? But I guess I am biased. I gotta say that, and I'm not just biased, but I'm also traumatized by this experience of studying at a university in China. So this, environment with like all top students kind of brought this motivation down, and to just kind of like, keep going, and like this routine as you mentioned. I mean, I feel like, yeah, I mean, half an hour instead of like 4 hours, yeah, gonna give you more results, but it's not gonna be 5,000 years at the end. I don't have that much time to acquire all knowledge and Chinese wisdom. And also, like, Chinese people don't understand me. This like, if I'm gonna invest more time in learning Chinese, it's still not gonna change their mentality. We're still not gonna find the common sense. That's what I'm thinking about, because I've had this problem with English speakers, but at those times I felt like, yo, there's a big chance if I'm gonna be good, like my pronunciation, accent, and all other stuff, just gonna improve gradually. There's gonna be a good, pleasable conversation, with the person. That's how I felt, and I don't really feel like that way with Chinese. Maybe it's just not my thing. What do you think? Based on the
Uh,
knowledge that like, this kind of small introduction of myself.
so when you started learning Chinese, were you already in China at the time, like studying at
Yeah,
university?
yeah,
I'd,
exactly.
pro-
So I,
I'd,
so,
prob- I'd
so
probably say
I
that would be
took,
a big difference.
yeah, I took like a year before the college, and as I got enrolled, I just kept learning
Mhm.
because they don't really require a higher skill. You just gotta pass HSK 4, what I did, and it's basically like very basic understanding. Definitely not on this, university level.
Mhm.
So I had to like, yeah, just basically get in and figure it out along the way.
Did you
But
find
it
it
turned
quite
out to
stressful?
be a fucking, yeah, it was a fucking disaster, man.
Yeah.
And at the beginning and even now, I mean, like, I can understand lectures, books. I was reading like macroeconomic class, like a textbook yesterday, and I was like really surprised on like I was amazed by my level still that I have, that I was like
Mhm.
able to understand everything, and
Oh, that's so
but it
cool.
still was like it was something, but it wasn't like, yo, Fedor, you're still not that bad, you gotta
Mhm.
you gotta keep going. It wasn't like that. It was just
Yeah.
maybe I'm just good, that's it. Nothing special. So I had to still double check it in English and Russian, make it a lot easier. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just tired of China. Being living, like 4 years straight. And now like
Mhm.
2 years without leaving the country, and only Jesus knows when I'm gonna leave. Probably like next year.
Yeah, I
Probably I'm
mean,
gonna
I guess.
graduate
Um,
by the end of this pandemic. So nobody knows.
so
But
I guess going back to the question about where did the Remnants period go, I think um, for me, looking at it from an outsider perspective, and this is just a guess from my part, but I would imagine that from what I've heard, if you start learning a language from zero, learning in the country, it's very much high stakes survival, like learn or not be able to order your noodles, sort of thing. And I can imagine that being very very stressful and having to deal with like an awful lot and surrounded by it, and also if you're in a university surrounded by people that are constantly better than you, then it's not going to be the best for your motivation. Maybe you start being like, oh, well, why is XYZ, why are they so much better than me, and why am I still like this? And you can start comparing a lot and get all these negative feelings. Whereas I feel like for me, when I started, I was in the UK. I just started doing it for fun. I'd had, there was a polyglot I watched online called Ollie Richards at the time, and all I had to go off to compare, I was like, oh, well, here's his like progress videos for a year. He just speaking a few words or whatever after a month, and then having saying some simple stuff after 3, and then 6 months. I was like, oh, well, I'll just try and compare with that. So when I was learning in England, it was very stress free. It was just kind of me doing it for fun. There was no big or higher stakes in it. It was just kind of taking my time and going along with that. And then in terms of like would I use it or not, because I already had friends from Hong Kong before I started that I already liked, and the girlfriend obviously that I'm still with, that I want to kind of be with going forward. So I was like, what? This isn't going to change going forward. So I want to kind of like more understand their background, which kind of gave me a lot of motivation to start with. And then when I did start digging around and I watched my first Hong Kong drama, it was Fist Within Four Walls, which came out in like 2015 maybe, and I was like, oh wow, this is actually like really good. And then I just wanted to like start digging more. So I think that kind of I already had some
Wow,
connections there, and it was very stress
that's
free, and also the fact that like I started like liking the culture more, and it was just like discovering this new thing that I didn't know anything about.
So I would like to
yeah. I
point
get.
out, the difference between the two. You, aside from one studying in the country and one studying out, is Luke can point to something specific that he likes in the culture, something that attracted him, something that he wanted to improve so he could like enjoy it more, which was like movies, or he said he started playing ping pong. So like when you have some kind of actual thing that you like, that you, if you learn the language you can enjoy it more, or like you can understand it better, that helps a lot.
Yeah, and it's very
Yeah,
important
for sure,
to point
100%.
out this, this for fun thing, because I guess everything starts just for fun, at the beginning, and as you progress and discover basically your path in that your position, then it gets more interesting. But I wouldn't really agree necessarily, because I also can play ping pong, and I could play ping pong before I came to China. My family basically is they're not like, they play like big tennis, and I usually play ping pong. I never like to run from on the court, so that ping pong stuff was a thing for me. But I started learning English in China as well, at the same time I came, like with this gentleman over here, Terry Johnson. And I guess that was the biggest interest for me, to just kind of get to know a person, and just try to understand, figure out like what I'm dealing with, and basically that was the biggest like attraction. But as for Chinese,
So you two met in China?
yeah.
Cool. So it sounds to me like the most meaningful connection that you made when you were in China was with Terry, and that's what drove you to learn English, because you wanted to kind of connect
Best
more.
connection so far I made it.
We got Dima as well, Dima. Shout outs to Dima.
Yeah, two best connections, but like, dude, like for 4 years, that's kind of like misery, God damn. But I've made some cool friends too, but they don't stick around, That's how it usually goes, this living in a international environment. We've talked about it on the podcast before. It's like an airport, I feel like if people have been coming, going, like every second, you get to meet a person from Rwanda or I don't know, Lebanon, and then tomorrow you're gone, But it's just nice to have some of those connections, whether it's in the UK or in China, and now we have this internet. It's just good to have this kind of memories with you. So sometimes I kind of reminisce on that, try to think good moments, related both language wise and culture wise. But yeah, we're not gonna talk about this shit, like I'm not an alcoholic, so just to let you know, I'm not gonna cry. But Tarik, I see you have a good question,
Yeah, of course, man. So as soon as you said Cantonese, Luke, it brought back a memory, because when I was in China, actually, there was a girl named Brenda, and her family is from China, but she grew up in Switzerland. So she's Swiss Chinese, and her family's from Guangdong, so she speaks Cantonese. And I remember she was there to learn Mandarin so she could be a teacher, a Mandarin teacher. And I was like, wait a minute, why do you have to be a Mandarin teacher? Just be a Cantonese teacher. You already know that language, like, just do that. And she's like, oh, there's no market for it. It's not like a valuable language. And I'm like, I guess, but like, there's got to be people out there that want to learn Mandarin. And Luke has entered the chat, so it's like, I don't know. I wonder, like, what have you encountered that also kind of like Mandarin versus Cantonese bias?
Yeah, quite a lot actually. I think so. First of all, there is quite a lot of people out there learning Cantonese, but the percentage of people learning Mandarin is way higher.
Obviously,
and I think for a lot of native speakers, even from Hong Kong, like the amount of people that kind of say like they'd even say to me in Cantonese sometimes, like, wait, you're learning Cantonese, but like Mandarin is more useful, and they'd actually tell me that in Cantonese. I'm like, I was like, when I went to Hong Kong for 2 weeks on holiday, and a lot of people were just there like, well, wow, but why are you learning Cantonese? I was like, I'm in Hong Kong, I'm trying to speak your mother tongue. I thought it'd be nice, and they're just there like, just learn Chinese instead. Like I did get that reaction like quite a few times. But then on the flip side, there's also lots of young people, especially in Hong Kong, who have a very proud sense of identity, and it's from a very complicated political background with a colonial history and everything. And Cantonese is a big part of their identity, and that they're even very proud of like all Cantonese resources and like media and stuff, and that if you do speak Cantonese to them, they are very, very surprised, very, very grateful, and very, very happy. So I do find there's like a mixed bag, and it depends. There's some people on both sides of it. And people get like, in terms of reactions, like I did speak to like maybe one or two people in Mandarin in the UK before, and like they are very surprised. But when I spoke to a Hong Konger in Cantonese in the UK, they were on a bus, and I could overhear them saying like, "Oh, where's the train station?" I was just like, "Oh, it's over that way." And I turned around and said it in Cantonese. They were just looking at me like, "What the hell is going on here?" You know? Like, and they really just, because it's rarer for them to learn, and they just think like Mandarin is this big super language, that they're just so grateful for anyone that goes through the time.
Yeah, I've found that to be the case in some other languages too. You want to say something?
But yeah, I just I have like 2 points, but I guess you just mentioned a very like a broad topic of whether or not go and learn like a minor language instead of a globalized one. Like, why not to learn Farsi, for example, or Hindu, like, or just some crazy dialect in Australia, like, but people still gonna be like, no, you gotta learn English or French because it's gonna be valuable for the market. And just from my point of view, it's so naive to follow that advice, because like I've been living with Pakistani people, and I had a dim view on them before, but as I started learning from them, I started to get more accustomed to their cuisine, to their culture, and I started to cook their way. At that time, I was just like, yo, I gotta learn some Urdu. I just gotta do that. But that motivation, that spike, it was not like permanent. I don't learn it, but it was just something. It's like, yo, what if I just gonna be able to at least speak a bunch of words? That would be enough, right? That's just my reaction to that. So people, don't be scared to to just not follow the same path, same river, go other side. That's cool. But
My
the real
first
question,
Oh, sorry, carry on.
yeah, the real question that I want to ask you guys, as being English native speakers, do you think that in the future Chinese, whether traditional or Mandarin, is gonna be a global language in terms of like everyone would like to learn Chinese instead of English? Like, it's gonna be a massive trend or something.
I'll let you take
I think
that
it's very
one.
hard to say. Like, I think it's very hard to say. Like, who would have guessed? Like, going back a few hundred years, this language from this small island in the middle of Europe would become, the global language and take over the world in terms of being the lingua franca it is. No one would have predicted that a few hundred years ago. And I think it's very hard to say going forward. But I know, at least in terms of like in Asia, a lot of people, like for example, a lot of Japanese people would learn Mandarin to do business in China and things like that to break into the market, because there's just so many people. So I know there are people learning Mandarin, especially in Asia, to kind of like access to the market and get the business and that. But in terms of becoming like a global lingua franca in the same way that English is, I would say unlikely to happen soon. But who knows? Who knows, man?
Yeah, I mean, we have to point out that that tiny island, yeah, made a great deal, and labor, to kind of propagate this lingua franca,
Yeah,
across the globe.
when you said no one would have predicted, I was like, I think the Queen predicted. I think that was exactly her plan.
Yeah,
No, it's
but
funny.
I think they're doing a pretty good job in terms of kind of promoting Chinese. Not the best job, but it's still the beginning. I feel like
Mhm.
right now, regardless of this pandemic or something, I start to feel like China is gonna be like like in the future, like second America, not in terms of diversity, but in terms of actual labor. How many people gonna like they want to come to China to work? Regardless of any like ecological issues, of some political issues. But it's just gonna be work here, like a massive labor market, and it's been a struggle. I know a friend of mine, professor. He has been struggling finding a job in the UK. And Tarik, I don't think like situation is better in Russia, but as I look for a job here for a position in China right now, it's like a lot of you know occupations, a lot of positions are available. So in terms of this hegemony and domination, I would say that yeah, like not in 20 years, but as Xi Jinping said, yeah, by 2060, I believe we will go like zero, like carbon free, basically. So I guess by that time, yeah, it's gonna be just all speaking Chinese. It's funny because like I met a bunch of foreigners on the street today. Foreigners, this word, it's a jargon. I'm sorry, but I learned this in China. Speaking Chinese, a guy from Africa, Sudan, a bunch of Indonesians, another white guy, and I was just like, yo, that's something, that's a swag right there. I wish I could just join their chat or something, but that's gonna be a thing, and it's crazy how fast it's just coming, before
Yeah,
like
but I think that's like in China though, right? So I think there's a
yeah,
big difference between like say in China than at like say international trade meetings at the for the United Nations or whatever. But I experienced similar things in Taiwan. So when I was going out, I mean, tended to have two groups of friends. So one were people that were Taiwanese friends that I met like, through various activities and stuff, and then the other group was like classmates from university. So they wanted to go out. I have friends from Japan, Korea, and like Vietnam and stuff, and we'd all just hang out and speak in Chinese together. And even there was some other British guy that hung out with us sometimes, and then we got so used to speaking in Chinese together that even when it was just the two of us, we'd just carry on speaking in Chinese, and then kind of like walking down the street and getting like really funny looks from some of the Taiwanese people, like, well, why are these two like people that are looking quite European, like speaking like Mandarin together? But it is quite normal in Taiwan, I think, for groups of foreigners to have the most common language to be Chinese, especially if they're from like different parts of Asia as opposed to like the West.
Oh, that's yeah, Taiwan. Yeah, could you tell us a little bit about Taiwan and your experience there? How was it like living there?
Yeah, so it was. I didn't really know much about Taiwan before I went. I kind of just thought, well, I went because there was a scholarship. To be honest, it was mostly around money, but and also I guess I had some experience with traditional characters before I went. When I went, I originally just studying at the university for like 3 hours a day at the Chinese class there, and then started off. It was a lot of fun. I think Taiwanese people are very friendly towards foreigners. They're very open, curious about foreigners. Sometimes you're just walking down the street and you get like people just shout at you just because you're white, and they're like, "Hey, friend," and it's kind of trying to walk over and like speak to you out of nowhere, and I kind of find that really strange still. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's quite strange. But then, as a country in general, I think it's really really nice. They've got lots of street food markets, lots of good food. It's very cheap food. Lots of cheap public transport for like trains and travel. Like lots of like mountains if you like hiking, and like clear like oceans. It's on an island if you like scuba diving and stuff like that. Like there's a lot to do, and it's quite cheap, especially if you're coming from a like Western country. So I really really enjoyed it. It was one of the best years of my life.
So I guess it was pretty convenient living there. But I would ask
Yeah.
you more specifically about cultural differences and if you had any like mainland friends over there, or rather like this case study of like comparing two sides, and yeah, how do you feel like interacting with the Taiwanese person and the person from mainland? Is there any difference in mentality or you know
I guess
philosophy
I
there?
should probably first qualify my answer by saying I don't know many people from mainland China. Like
Hmm.
I went to China for a week on holiday to Guangdong, and again people were very very friendly. They were very nice. I went there by myself for a week and a bit using couch surfing, so just staying with different families and groups of friends and just kind of going out with them. felt, really nice. They were
Alright.
very happy to speak to me.
You
And
didn't
then-
have enough
But you
exposure.
you weren't on your own. You didn't have to like, find people yourself or anything, right?
No, I just kind of went on through couchsurfing. I just spent the whole week with the hosts, and they just kind of like showed me around and stuff. So it was a lot of fun. But I didn't know that many people from China. But in terms of Taiwan as well, I felt, and again, most people I speak to just inherently from most countries, they seem exactly the same. They just want to, like, make a living and have fun with their friends and live a comfortable life with their families. I think it's the same in most places. They don't feel much difference. It kind of they all just feel like, nice people to me.
Interesting, nice people.
So
They are.
I gotta ask, back a little bit back to the topic. So this is one question I've always had, and kind of I have my own opinion on it, but which one do you actually think is harder to learn? Chinese, Mandarin, Cantonese, and I also want to throw in English.
Okay, sure. So I think English, just obviously I'm a native speaker, so I don't really know what it's like to learn English. I just kind of did it, so it's hard to say. But I think for me, when you're thinking about if you're talking about from a point of self-study, which that's what I'm coming from. So I think for me, two main things would affect the difficulty of a language that you want to learn. The first one would be lexical distance, which is just, how similar or distant is the language from one you already know. And the other thing is availability of resources. So from an English-speaking perspective, Cantonese and Mandarin are both very distant. So, they're quite far away. They have a different writing system, different sounds, tones, things we're not used to. So they're probably similar difficulty in that aspect. But in terms of availability of resources, because in Cantonese they have a big divide between the spoken and the written language, it means when you're watching TV, most of the time the subtitles aren't going to be what they're saying. It's going to be kind of like what they're saying. It's, if you imagine, someone speaking in heavy slangy English from like Texas, and then it's just kind of like broadcaster standard American English from the bottom. The meaning is kind of the same, but the words and the wording and the choice of words and the grammar and stuff they're using is completely different. So it's like in Cantonese, you always have to contend this problem of when you're trying to understand movies or TV or YouTube, the majority of the time the subtitles and the audio doesn't match up. And for me, that made a big difference in terms of difficulty. And also for Mandarin, there are some books written in like spoken Cantonese, like colloquial Cantonese as people actually say it, but there's not many. Whereas like standard Chinese, which is more similar to how Mandarin spoken, there's literally thousands. So I think in terms of resource availability, there's a lot more for Mandarin. There is more and more for Cantonese now, but it's definitely an issue that you need to dig around a bit more to find stuff that you like.
And what about speaking wise? I'm curious about that because I mean, when I hear Cantonese, to me it sounds way cooler. That's my personal opinion. I like Cantonese more than Mandarin. It sounds way cooler, but it's also, as an English speaker, it seems a lot harder to produce the same sounds.
I think in terms of like, I don't know, Cantonese, they always have a lot of those like particles at the end of the sentence. They always have like the la, ama, la, kaza, whatever, tim, and they always have like all these things at the end of the sentence that they add on. It makes it sound very like musical and very cool. Yeah. I think in terms of pronunciation, to be honest, there are more tones in Cantonese, but I still think in terms of like for Mandarin sounds, I think there's a lot that sounds like quite similar. So like a lot of the sounds when you go to speak in Mandarin, like when you're looking at the differences between like when you're learning pinyin, you'd have people say like a word to you, and you'd be like, oh wait, hang on, I can't actually hear that much difference, between the two. So like the C versus the S sound or something. Some of them sound quite similar if you're not used to it, and even now sometimes I can mix it up and stuff. So I think for Cantonese actually a lot of the pronunciation is not too bad, and I kind of feel that as long as you kind of pronounce the tones okay and you do it, like they will understand you. I've actually had probably more harder times getting people to understand me when I first started speaking Mandarin compared to Cantonese. But I think also a lot of the time that's probably because I was mixing the two together and speaking like a weird hybrid. It could also be because of that,
Yeah. Oh, that's a quick question because what you said just like triggered. Like I speak a few different languages, right? So I speak Japanese, I speak some Chinese, I speak some Russian, and sometimes, especially if I'm focusing on, let's say I'm focusing on Russian, which I have been, when I have to go back to Japanese, like if I meet with my Japanese friends, I get Russian in my brain like all the time, like trying to speak Japanese, and I'm just like, don't say "parimayu," don't say "da," don't say like these Russian words. So do you find that happens between Mandarin and Cantonese?
Not even just Mandarin and Cantonese. I was one of my friends spoke Spanish, and I was like, "Oh, claro que sí, yo hablo español." Cause I'm like, wait, what did I just say? Like, I was instead of saying like, I'd be like, "Oh, sí, hablo español." Cause I'm like, wait, that's the wrong word. Why did I just say that? But so it's just for me, it kind of feels like you've got like your native language, and then just like all of your foreign languages just kind of in a big mix together, and they're very like easy to like mix up. But especially for Cantonese and Mandarin, because the thing that I struggle with the most, a lot of the time I'd use the Mandarin pronunciation with the Cantonese tone, or the Cantonese tone, the Mandarin tone with the Cantonese pronunciation, and mix it up like that way. So, for example, there's a lot of things in like Mandarin with either the OU or the AU sound. So, like, I don't know, like head is like tou, right? But in Mandarin, it's not tou, it's tao. And if you look at like the one for after in Mandarin, it's ho. In Cantonese, it's hao. So a lot of the time, the AU and the OU sound are literally just one-to-one, just swap around the two. And, like, I'd always confuse that a lot. Even now, if you watch some of my videos speaking Mandarin on my channel, a lot of the time I'd be like, the shi hao instead of the shi ho, because I'd just mix up the ending of the words. So that's probably my biggest mistake. And I do that a lot. And even sometimes, like, there's like seems to be sometimes a one-to-one mapping in terms of how sounds convert, and sometimes I don't even think about it. So, like, a lot of the time, like, the K in Cantonese could be pronounced to maybe like a G. So instead of like, da gai is like a G sound, but so a lot of the time, old habit, I'd say da kai because I'd add the initial from Cantonese on there because that's what I was used to in my brain for the same character. So I kind of mix up a lot of things like that quite a lot. But it's getting better, and I find that the better my Mandarin gets, the less I'm mixing it up. But I also haven't spoke Cantonese in a while, and then sometimes if I like listen to a podcast and then go to speak Mandarin right after, it's just a nightmare. So yeah, I do struggle with that quite a lot.
I mean, the two languages are pretty similar. That's like, hey, wow, I can't even imagine that. I don't even know how Cantonese sounds. To me, it's like I know some words, like, but I've never actually listened to one. But I got a little question for you, Luke. So, have you ever met a foreign speaker, basically not native English speaker, who could speak English with British accent?
You mean like 100%? You learn it as
I mean,
an
like,
adult?
like a good copy,
And which British accent, right? Luke, you gotta come on, you gotta point this out. There's several accents from the British Isles.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing. Like when I was in Taiwan, people would always be like, "Oh, did you recommend learning like the British or the American accent?" I'm like, well, what does it even mean by like a British accent? If you think we all speak like Benedict Cumberbatch and they go to Scotland, you're being for a very hard time. So yeah, I think that's interesting point. But actually, one of my girlfriend's friends from university, a guy called Jeffrey, I remember he sounded kind of like Hong Kongy, like kind of they speak very good because I learned from a young age anyway. But then I didn't see him for like a year and came back, and he was just working at just in the shop doing part time. And I think a lot of his co-workers were like from Newcastle and Scotland. And he came back, and I was like, "Why do you suddenly sound like super super Scottish?" And I think he actually made like a very conscious effort to try and like copy the accent around him. I know other examples. There's a woman called Kirsten Cable who runs the podcast The Fluent Show. She sounds very very close, like probably 99.9% like a British person, but then every now and again, like there's a little something that you'd think maybe not. So there are people that get very, very close, but also like I think it's also worth putting out that they're very easy to understand, and when they do say something that kind of gives away the origin, it's not, like, oh, that person's messing up my language. It's actually endearing, because I think if you live in the UK so long and all you hear is a British accent, if you hear a different accent, it actually sounds quite nice to your ears.
Boom, there it is. There it is, this is something I told Fedor a long time ago, like almost when we first met. He was asking me about accents, and I was like, yo, I love accents. Like, I wish everyone had an accent, because here in America, it's the same kind of thing. It's like we always hear standard English, so when we hear someone with an accent, it's like, it's kind of attractive. It's kind of like interesting.
Yeah.
It depends,
100%.
I've been thinking about it recently, but then I start to hear an audiobook like produced by a guy with a thick accent, So, in the bar or just casual, podcast, it's fine to have it. But when you actually hear it, like the flaw, because that's how I consider, you're not going to listen to me for 9 hours reading like a poem or something. It's got to be like a fucking, your ears going to bleed. But actually, when you need like, some information being put, serious shit, yeah, you got to prefer, a native speaker. That's for sure, at least from my experience.
Yeah, not me, man. I actually like.
I
was gonna say I had a recent experience where I had to call tech support, and it was an Indian guy. But while he was like explaining to me what to do, I was like smiling so hard. I was like trying not to like ask him where he's from and stuff, because his accent was just so funny, It's like, but it wasn't funny in like I'm laughing at his way of, like, it was just funny. Like, it was nice to hear something different. And like, yeah, there was some times where I didn't really understand him. I was like, oh, could you just say that again? And then he said it again, and I got it. It's like, I don't know. For me, it's maybe I'm.
Yeah, I think to clarify, you said when you said it, then you said a thick accent. So there's times when people speak with a very thick accent, and it's very hard for me to understand. I have to put in a lot of mental energy to understand. But there's other people that speak very clearly. I can understand them very easily, and they have a little bit of an accent, and I think that's fine, because I don't have to, I don't know, it's close enough to the actual thing where I don't have to put in any more mental effort to understand them. It's very easy to understand, but they still have a bit of an accent, and I think that's okay. So I think for me, it more comes down to not getting rid of your accent altogether, but kind of like reducing it enough so that it's not really thick and hard to understand, and that you're speaking clearly. And if that's the case and you're easy to understand, then I think it's not really a big problem.
Yeah, Fedor, like your English, man.
Yeah, like your English is a perfect example.
Yeah,
Way better than my
Chinese.
yeah.
I get ashamed, because like every time people say it, I get like, yo, I've been learning Chinese for the exact same, number of years, and it's like, far from perfect, way far. But thank you guys. Now I'm at least confident to say that. And but it's still not the level that I'm trying to achieve, because still you can tell, and at least in my opinion, if you can deceive a person that you're not from the country that they're thinking, that's the level that I want to achieve. So like, yo, you cannot really tell, man, can you? That's the level, and
at least from my point of view, I'm not going to trick any Taiwanese person to thinking I'm Taiwanese. They just take one look at me and
yeah.
Oh, and that's a good transition right there. Yeah. So all right. Everybody's giving me the floor.
Make this cut. I'm gonna give you this.
The microphone is in my hands now. All right. So this is one point that we can talk this, like, we can talk it out slowly, but so the idea, right, of looking Chinese or Taiwanese. We know ethnically there are people groups from that country that have a certain look, but anybody could be born in that country and grow up in that culture and be from that place, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do we as, like, me and Fedor, we've talked about this a lot, but like, part of the reason why I in particular stopped learning Asian languages is because I really wanted when I first started learning languages to be able to like in some ways assimilate into the culture. Like I wanted to feel at least like I could be a part of a different community. And not that I wanted to take their culture and make it my own, but rather I just wanted to be appreciated in the same way that they appreciate everyone else because I could speak the language, right? And now knowing that I look clearly, I don't look like the people who are native to that language, that also motivated me and pushed me very hard to like hold myself to a very high standard. It's like, if I want to be able to be accepted in that culture in the way that I like, basically as a person from that place, I need to speak on a high level. I need to be able to not only express myself well, but pronounce all the words in the same way. And so like, when I was learning Japanese, I took it very seriously. I got really good, and I was told by lots of Japanese people, like, my accent was perfect. I sounded just like a Japanese person. So like, but with Chinese, I feel like it's a little different, you know? I don't know if you think that. But so basically what I'm trying to say is, do you think that there is maybe a problem, we can say, with, you know, Asian people and accepting foreigners speaking their language as like, okay, like you can be in our group, you can be one of us because you understand us perfectly?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've definitely encountered similar problems before. I think I guess you're talking about two things there, and I want to, you know, I'm not sure which one you want to discuss more, but there's the one topic that you mentioned earlier of, you know, people that were born and raised in that country that speak that language natively, but like struggle with getting accepted because they look different. You know, my friend lived in Japan since he was 12 years old, speaks Japanese basically natively. There's other people that are actually born there, you know, speak it as their native language, and then don't, you know, they still walk into like a family mart or something, and then the Japanese or the Taiwanese person just goes and hides behind the counter because they're like, oh, they see them and just assume they must not have been born here, they must not speak my language. And there's a lot of problems with that. But then the other side of things is that if you learn it to a high level as a second language, or third, fourth, whatever, then will you get accepted when you learn to a high level? And I think they're two different things. So I don't know which one you want to speak about more.
Go through both, man. Go through both. I'm curious about both. What your opinion is on it.
With I'll just start with the first one then about, and again, I'm no expert. Obviously, I was born in the UK, but from speaking to one of my friends, again, he's lived in Japan since he was 12, and he says the same problem. You know, like he goes into like wherever, like a lot of the time he gets people speaking English to him. He was speaking with his, you know, friend who was born in Japan but from African descent in Japan at the time, and they were speaking Japanese together, and then like some Japanese person comes over and goes, apparently they asked him, why are you speaking Japanese? Why don't you speak in English? And they just replied, well, Japanese is both of our native language. Why would we not speak in Japanese? And there's a lot of like assumptions there that because they don't look a certain way that they're not Japanese and that they should be speaking in English instead. So I think there are definitely a lot of preconceptions and stuff like that. And even to a lesser degree, even in like Taiwan, there's a lot of Aboriginal people that suffer with identity problems because they have, you know, a slightly different accent or whatever, or their skin colour's a bit darker, and they actually, a lot of stories from them, you know, getting bullied and stuff in school. I remember watching a video by a Taiwanese YouTuber, TK Story, interviewing, you know, an Aboriginal person who just talking about like the different problems of racism and stuff, and I can send you a link later if you want. But apparently, you know, there's a lot of, it's just really hard, especially in school, that, you know, you kind of just, whatever sets you out apart from the other kids, you're going to get picked on for it. And that's kind of like the harsh reality of it a lot of the time. I think a lot of it comes down to like that in general in Asia, most countries are very like homogenous compared to the West. So if you look at, you know, London or New York, there's people from all over the world. Whereas you go to like, I don't know, like Osaka or something, called 99% of people are Japanese ethnically. So if you're in the 1%, you're going to stand out a lot. So I think it's, you know, the more immigration that happens and the more like general ethnic diversity there is in the country, I think the problem would get reduced. But, you know, not 100%. Obviously, there's still a lot of problems with racism in the UK and America that I mean, all you need to do is look at the BLM movements at the moment to know that.
Right.
You know.
But it is an interesting kind of idea, right? Because if we think about the future going forward, it seems, at least in my head, that we're moving towards a more unified world. We're moving, like, everyone, like this, even the whole BLM thing, the whole anti-racist thing, is basically a push to get people to just treat each other the same. Like, treat each other, even if you have a difference in your appearance, just treat people with respect, and that's all people want. So I'm just wondering if you think that Asia will change over time, if you know that it's changing or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not sure if I don't really know much about the topic myself. But my impression is that it is changing, slowly. Like, there's the more that people get used to the idea, and the more like I guess the fact is most people in Taiwan or Japan or China or whatever, they've probably never seen someone who wasn't looking like them and born in that country before. But the more people like that exist, and the more people that integrate into society, I think it's definitely going to make a big deal. And I think kind of a lot of the problems are maybe they see you based on your appearance, they would make a judgment. This person's probably moved here. There's a YouTuber called, was it Shalmaz I Now Yue, and he did a YouTuber with some guy who was born, I think it was it speaking like Fujianese or something, or no, it was even like Sichuan or something. He was born in there, and then like he would just speak like Sichuanese with the locals, and they'll be like, oh, instantly they'd know that he was born there, because if he wasn't, why the hell would he speak Sichuanese? So I think when people meet, when they get to know you and they realize that you're actually born here, like all the prejudices, or most of them, a lot of the time would go away. But it's that you can't avoid that if you're a ghost, like the corner shop down the road. If they see you that you're white or black and you don't look Asian, you don't look like them, they're going to assume, oh, this person probably doesn't speak Chinese, and they're going to maybe hand you an English menu or give you like a simplified version of the materials or whatever. I think that's hard to avoid.
Yeah. I like your take on it, Luke. I feel like for all audience that are watching this, podcast right now, I feel like you guys have to come to terms that not in all countries you're gonna be accepted as like, a citizen or something. Like, I've come to terms with that personally. Like, I don't really plan, I guess it's just now, at this current moment, I'm not like really planning to settle down in China or try to be one of them, like Chinese. It's like, well, nah. So I'm good to be called Lao Wai, I like it. It's like a rank, it's like, stripes on my shoulders, So it's Lao Wai, beach cat,
I don't know, maybe just like it would be better to be called Waigor, and it seems a bit more neutral.
Yeah, Waigor and Lao Wai, it's all that shit, It's like basically like Caucasian, in English and American English.
But
I get
like it's just little things like when you're in a restaurant in Taiwan and like you overhear the waiter and they're like, oh, what table is it for? And it's like, oh, 是那个外国的朋友啊. I'm just like, wait, how do you know I'm foreign? I mean, obviously I look like this.
Yeah,
but
I guess it's fine. I'm not
like
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not that picky anymore. I used to be reactionary to that, but now it feels like, all right. And if you're a person from that place, like this guy that you're talking about, from Sichuan, I don't think it would be a big deal for him. He just got used to that, just looks, just reactions in the class, and all kinds of stuff. So as at the moment as he starts talking, his like Sichuan dialect or something, that's where like exactly, just, like, boom, you're like normal. Okay, you're white, all right, black, no problem, But like, I guess it's not a thing in Russia though. It's like, that reaction. Why don't you speak like English and speak in Japanese? That would be rude as fuck. That's like, like this Russian mentality. I would punch that person because it's just like, even in Russia, no matter how deem we treat somebody, Nobody gonna say that. You speak Russian? Oh, wow. We don't need to strain ourselves to produce some English sounds. That's the best. All right, Russian. Oh,
Yeah, I
that's it.
think maybe one thing I'd like to add before we talk about something else is that I think so. Most of what I was talking about then was just interactions with strangers, but I feel like it's very easy to get maybe not really easy, but it is a lot easier to kind of get accepted into a group of friends as just being one of the groups. So even I only stayed in Taiwan for a year. I had a group of Taiwanese friends, and they kind of treat me like they treat each other. Just like if I said something wrong and messed up my Chinese, maybe I'd say something in the meeting was off. They'd just take it at face value, and they'd shout at me like they shout at my friends, at their other friends or whatever. And it kind of felt that sense of like belonging in the group. And although I'd go into like 7-Eleven or Family Mart, and then people would be like, "See," or just shout like single words in English at me and stuff, just because they think I don't speak Chinese. But when I'm with my friends, it's just normal, because they're my friends. So it is a lot easier on that side of things to integrate in, but it's never going to go away with strangers, I don't think. Or at least not for a long time.
Sometimes I make them feel guilty of doing that shit. I pretend, or like I get disgusted, or like you're licking American ass Chinese. You're bad for this country. In Chinese, and that's what makes them like, oh fuck, man, I'm sorry. I didn't want you to speak any English, but it's fine. I'm fine. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun to have some jokes sometimes and not take it too seriously. Like one time, some guy went up to me and was like, "Hello, speak English," and I was just like, "Okay." No entiendo.
But damn, that's just crazy. Yeah. So we gotta make a slight transition, from language to sort of philosophy of Taiwan, or like all Chinese, Confucianism. That's what I've been learning a lot recently. And not just primarily focusing on Western ideas, but also kind of, transitioning my spectrum to East. So, what is your experience with, Chinese idea in terms of philosophy and stuff? How do you like it, Luke?
I mean, I like it quite a lot. I think the first thing to say is that anyone learning Chinese is going to get some exposure to Chinese philosophy just through like the Chengyu and stuff, because like, it's some of it's embodied into the language. But when I was started getting really into Cantonese, one person that I started watching quite a lot of was Bruce Lee, and he obviously speaks a lot about philosophy. I just watched there's a TV show on Netflix called The Legend of Bruce Lee. It's a Mandarin TV show, and he again talks a lot about philosophy and ideas from Taoism in the TV show. I find it very, very interesting, and also, I remember I read Steve Kaufman's book a while ago, and he introduced the story of Zhuangzi and the Crooked Tree and things like that, and stuff like that. I find absolutely fascinating. So, I don't know a great deal about it, but I really like the idea, especially from Taoism, that it's just kind of like everyone should just go with the natural tendencies and don't try to like go against your natural tendencies. You want to go with what you personally like to get the best results, and don't fight your personality. And I think that's so important. And if a lot of people accepted that, then it would, be a lot easier. So a quick example, if you really enjoy watching TV shows and reading, but you hate flashcards, like stuff like Anki for language learners, then don't do Anki. Just read and listen more and watch stuff you like more, and then you're still going to improve. You no need to force yourself to do something you don't like. So I really like that kind of concept in Taoism.
Yeah, do what you like. Yeah, I like it, especially for work.
Yeah. We've been talking about it, a lot in our, private chats, with Tarik. But yeah, Bruce Lee, what a figure, I watched his recent documentary, Be Water, SPSN, right? And I just got so amazed by how an individual could just change, the whole game, basically. And,
I
he
didn't
didn't
actually...
even...
I'm sorry.
No. It's all right, man. No problem. the portrait of that guy just dropped down from my tea table, but you know, because it's alive. But do you have like besides Bruce Lee? Do you have some of the some artists or people in our age that you're curious about, Chinese or Taiwanese, like musicians, like some on cultural aspects?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of TV shows I like. At our age, I don't know. I watched a lot of YouTubers. I could. I mean, I don't. I don't know if you can share screen on Discord, but I can. Well, yeah, I think there's a button on there. I could go through my YouTube and show you some of the people I'm subscribed to. But my favorite one's the YouTuber called TK Story. He has a bunch of different things on loads of different social problems in Taiwan, or just like some about environmentalism and things like that. Bands and things. I think you mentioned music. I really like a band called Mayday from Taiwan. There's another one from Hong Kong called Supper Moment. They do have songs in Mandarin as well. They're probably my two favorite. And then after that, there's also one called Pa Pun Band. It was like, yeah, Pa Pan Tuan. It's like scared of being fat band or something. Anyway, their songs are really funny and light and kind of rocky sort of thing. I think they're really good.
Interesting. So it's like you have a like a it had a big impact on you. Like it feels like with the spark in your eyes, you're talking about it, you're describing. Like I cannot really brag about it, like Chinese. Nah, man, not really. I started to learn some Russian shit. I started to play Russian music here. I miss my people. That's how I feel. But I guess that's the difference in terms of actually living in the country and learning about it from outside. Like myself on America, same shit.
Yeah, I think it's a big difference. So like, there's a what's it called? Like, so let's take Mayday for example. Like, I started getting into the music when I first arrived in Taiwan. I went to a gig with some of my friends, but then when some of my friends were like, "Oh well, do you know the story behind this song?" And then explain it to me, and be like, "Oh well, that's actually really powerful." So like, there's a song, for example, like what's it, "玫瑰少年," and it's like Rose shouting to someone when they were younger, I guess, or like in like teenage years or whatever. And there's the story behind that. It's basically the song's not originally by Mayday, but it's Taiwanese. But there was a kid in school who was bullied for being very feminine, and then ended up, he died in the school later. They're not sure why, if it was killed or suicide. But then after this started a big talk, it's like politically in Taiwan about accepting people for who they are and not like distinguishing between genders. And if someone's more feminine, you should not like bully them for that sort of thing. And when you see the talks and the speeches by the mum standing up for like LGBT rights, and you see all the stuff around it, then it's not just a song, because you get like all the background and what goes on. And like, for example, there was a Taiwanese drama that I watched that was called something like the 我们与恶的距离 is the Chinese name. I think the English name was something like The Distance Between Us, about this guy who's on death's row for killing some people. And I was like, oh, it's like a cool drama. Speak to my friends about it. They're like, oh, it was related to this incident in 2015 in Taipei when someone took a knife on the metro and just started slashing at people. And it's like, oh, wow, that's so fucked up. But when you like know more about the background and things of what's going on, it definitely makes you appreciate the content a lot more, for better or for worse. So
it goes back to Tarik's advice on Fedor. You just gotta know what the fuck is going on in this country. Who is stopping who? Who is like making music out of it? Making beats. In the same.
But as Luke started talking, there was two words that kept playing in my head that I wanted to shout, but of course he was talking, so I did it. Freedom of speech. That's 3 words, actually. Sorry. But I think that's important. In Taiwan, you could have a song like that and it could be a popular song, whereas in mainland, I don't know about that.
You don't have any songs,
No, be right. He's singing about what? No. Winnie the Pooh doesn't like that, You gotta sing about honey, and that's it, So, it's I think it's interesting that, just what you said.
Cut this part, I feel insecure. We're gonna, honey, goddamn, honey, you gotta.
Well, I'm in the UK, so I'm safe at least,
Yeah, don't worry, man. Don't worry, you'll be fine.
I mean,
But,
that's definitely a big thing for sure, especially with the Taiwanese election back in I can't remember, it was January or February. They recently elected Tsai Ing-wen, and it's very much against anti-China, pro-democracy sort of party. So they're very big on that in Taiwan. So it definitely plays a big part.
Shout outs to Tsai Ing-wen. I'm a fan of hers. I have not seen a single policy that I didn't like from her.
English vegetable. That's the slang in Taiwan. They call it English vegetable.
Yeah, exactly. When I heard her name, I was just laughing right away. I was like, Tsai Ing-wen? I was like, what? That's a name?
My friend was like, oh, are you going to watch the election between English vegetable and Korean fish? I was like, the hell are you talking about? Han Guo Yu.
Oh, that guy's name is Han Guo Yu? Korean language.
Apparently, they call him Korean fish.
Oh, you on that one.
Yeah,
that's funny.
But this moments of laughs, right? We can laugh on politics. It's not a thing in China, in this mainland. It's you cannot, you gotta be expelled or, I don't know, I'm not gonna say shit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all right if we say it, but you gotta, on your end, just
I might disappear from the this frame, in any second, so I don't know. But yeah.
But all right, here's a topic for you, Luke, because you said you've been studying classical Chinese, and I'm wondering if there was something that led you to that, if there was a particular thing that introduced you to it, and from what you've read so far, could you tell us some things that you've learned or?
Yeah, I have a lot of things to say about it. A lot of it links into Chinese philosophy. If you're interested in that, then some things you could understand a lot more. But I'm trying to think where to start. Okay, so yeah, the reason it was always something that I had in my head for a while because I had things I was interested in that I thought would be really cool to read. You've got Journey to the West. I watched the 1996 drama, and as a fan of Dragon Ball as a kid, I watched that and was like, they took half the show from Journey to the West, So this is cool stuff. And then I really enjoyed the drama. I also, got a bit more interested in Chinese history. So I was like, it'll be, Remnants of the Three Kingdoms would be really cool to read as well. Then they've also got the actual historical documents. And then they started liking Bruce Lee more and Taoism. So I was like, it'd be cool to read stuff from Zhuangzi and Lao Tzu. And you get more into Chinese mythology and think of there's the classic of the mountain and seas influencing all of Asian culture basically with creatures like the fox with 9 tails coming out of it, which has influenced Pokemon and Naruto and whatever. And you just think, well, there's so much influences and things you can understand from this that it would be so cool to learn. And that's kind of this concept I had in my head for a while. And I thought, I'll just wait until I'm a bit better at Mandarin at the time. And then I started watching more of these historical dramas like the Gu Zhuang Zhu, and they talk in a lot of the time in the TV show in kind of they call it Han Wen Yin Wen. It's half classical Chinese. It's not fully like that, but they kind of have little bits of it in. And I was finding it very hard to understand. And sometimes they actually read passages out from scrolls in the TV show, and I'm like, yo, I didn't understand any of this. So I thought, that's what gave me the original desire to learn. And then I guess what have I learned since then? There's I'm only not got very far with it at the moment. I should probably preface with that. But one of the things that stood out to me a lot is when you look at a lot of, things written in classical Chinese. So for example, the character Ren Shi De Shi means to know, right? Mm-hmm. But in classical Chinese, you'd use it in the same way as you use hui. So you'd be like, 我会说中文. It's I can speak Chinese. But in classical Chinese, if you just swap out the hui, it would be 我是说中文, and it actually means like to be able to do something. And the thing that struck me about that is that like that's exactly the same as the usage in Cantonese. So you wouldn't say 会, you'd say the same 是, but in Cantonese it's 识. So a lot of the things that they use in classical Chinese, like in terms of patterns, like that they'd use like the 是 for that. They'd use like 同 as into like me and you. They'd use it like similar to that. So a lot of these things are the same as the using in Cantonese and not Mandarin. So it kind of a bit of cool proof among other things like the characters that Cantonese is closer to classical Chinese. That is something that struck me as quite interesting. And another thing that I was looking at today, which I found quite interesting, talking about philosophy, is a lot. Yeah, I'm reading like some very kind of simplified passages from like different texts and things at the moment, going through with my teacher, and she was explaining to me like the thing about the water, and like a lot of these concepts are like written in classical Chinese and text and stuff. So she said something like people that are smart like the water, and people that are like kind tend to like the mountains. And it was like, oh, and she was like, well, why do smart people like water? Well, it's because water can take any shape. It can like form and like turn into the thing. Like you put it in a cup, it becomes a cup. You put it in a bowl, it becomes a bowl. And it kind of reminds me of all these like Bruce Lee speeches that I used to listen to. And like learning classical Chinese to a certain extent, you can understand better these ideas and where they come from. And there's also looking at a lot of Chengyu, you could understand why it would be written that way because it's used in a way that would match with classical Chinese. So it helps you understand Chengyu a lot better as well. So there's just like a few ideas to throw around, but I very much only just started to like scratch the surface, and I'm pretty excited to carry on going.
So would you say that the more classical Chinese you learn, the easier it is to understand the culture, like as a whole, I guess?
I think a good question. I think in terms of like some stuff like philosophy and origins of words and Chengyu and certain ideas that people have, it would help. But something that I always thought for me that is a big part of helping me understand the culture, apart from just making friends with people from the country, or something that I've always found makes a big difference is reading books from that country in terms of like novels and fiction, because and to me that makes a much bigger difference, because I feel like you're going to live a life through the lens of the person, of the main character in that story. So you're going to be looking at it from their point of view, thinking at things the way that they do. And to me, that I feel like it at least gave me a better understanding of the culture compared to something like classical Chinese. But I haven't learned that much of it yet, so maybe that will change. I don't know.
And I have a side question for you, Luke. How familiar are you with Western philosophers like Kant, Nietzsche, Hegel?
Not very familiar.
Interesting.
Not really very familiar at all.
What about everyone's favorite? Socrates.
I mean, I know, heard of like some of the Greek philosophers and things like that, and I think it's also built into like the Socratic method as well, things like that. I do hear some of the names and things, but I don't know like loads about it. I haven't like read into it. I just kind of hear the names and some of the things they said in quotes and stuff. But I guess there's the question: is if you wanted to understand some of these Greek philosophers, would you then have to go learn Greek first before you can get a proper understanding and appreciation for it?
I could see that. I would love to read like Plato's allegories or some of his essays in Greek. That would be interesting. Greek seems like such a challenging language to me for some reason, though.
It always struck me one of those things that I think would be so cool. Apart from Greek food being absolutely delicious, which it is, there's also a massively rich history in terms of like a lot of the romanticized periods that we look at in terms of like books and things and whatever. A lot of it's taken from Greek like history and also like mythology and stuff. So I feel like there'd be a hell of a lot there to explore. And at least for me, because my background's in engineering, I know probably like half the alphabet anyway from just maths and stuff, because we use it in like that,
Yeah.
So it's I think it'll be very cool to learn, but probably not going to. I don't have the time. I'm trying to keep swimming along with Chinese. It's
what works for work. You don't really need to reinvent the bicycle, bro. It's like, I guess everyone like a really big takeaway from this for my question and your response would be, and it's my observation, kind of field study is just, a lot of foreigners that come to mainland, they pick the either side, like they're gonna be speaking English or just Chinese, with no English. So that's where they start to develop, and choosing this side is very important, because now, especially with this, economic crisis, world crisis, and people have been trying to, pick up the side, is it Chinese fault or like, US or, all kinds of questions. So to me, at least, it's not, now I'm gonna approach learning Chinese from this hater perspective, because I kind of understand how the West operates, and a lot of those ideas, they're not new, and it was in that long past, and they haven't been really developed in the present, whereas in Western ideas, they've been kind of, scientifically proven, and the Enlightenment and stuff. So to me, it's like I have a question now, instead of a goal, probably to just, can I find something interesting in either Chinese history or their philosophy? Or would that amaze me to such extent that I would switch the side? That's an interesting fucking quest, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
but
even if it's not something that draws you in on like a big fundamental level like that, you can always find music you like. You can always find YouTubers that you like. You can find audiobooks when the voice sounds pleasant. There's lots of things, little things you can find. To start with, just like little things, like a lot of people will learn Japanese because they like the sound of anime. They don't necessarily know about Japanese history or philosophy, but that's the start trigger. And then years later, the more they spend with Japanese media and things, they start to appreciate little things more, and then they branch out after. So I don't think it has to be like all in or none. You can just start by trying to find like one YouTuber you like. Yeah.
Speaking of Japanese culture, I watched a sumo fight recently.
I love sumo. It's such a cool sport.
I just gotta give Japanese a credit for their ceremony. I think there's been so meticulous at that, way more than mainland China. Gotta say that, and it was such an amazing performance, That's a respect right there, It's like, salt being put, on tatami, right? And this dance and people, Jesus.
Yeah, sumo is awesome.
I watched like an exhibition sumo. I watched like an exhibition sumo match when I was in Japan. It was so much fun. And then my brother ended up putting on this like fat costume and trying to wrestle with one of them, and got, it was a lot. It was like a tourist thing, but it was a lot of fun. Like learning about like how they do it in the rituals and how the sumo ring works, and how like most of the people that like apparently the people that make the most money is like in like the top 10%. So if you're like 10.5%, then you don't get like no money. But if you're like 9.9%, you earn like shitloads of money. So it's that point around like that line where it's the cutoff gets like super, super competitive, and a lot of people watch that instead like the very top and stuff like that. I thought that was quite interesting. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, sumo is pretty cool.
But in terms of traditions, at least for us, for Western people, it's well known that Taiwan, or not well known, but it's like kind of obvious that Taiwan has preserved more cultural heritage than mainland. So in terms of traditions, how would you describe Taiwan? What have you seen there? What is the real Chinese culture, my friend?
What is it? I think this is a really weird question for me to answer because, obviously I'm not no expert, but I guess the thing that's always interested me about looking at Taiwanese culture specifically is not necessarily Chinese culture. It's just like this big melting pot of loads of different things thrown together. You've got a lot of Aborigines that might have originally been from countries like the Philippines. That's why they have darker skin. You've got people that have come over from China. You've got if you look at like influence, you've got influences from the Dutch in terms of like Tan Shui and stuff, and like the forts there that were colonized. But you've also got been colonized by Japanese at different times. So you're looking at some of the things in Taiwan. You've got buildings with Japanese influence. You've got building places with Chinese influence. You've got British influence. You've got all these different things together.
Yeah,
And it's
diversity.
very interesting.
My favorite.
Yeah, you've
And
got
you
like
got, and plus add to that American, army,
You got the American fleet, right around the corner too.
Exactly. That's
it's
the
very,
biggest
very
diver-
interesting.
But that's a good point, man. I gotta say that people, that's the key resource, in any country, I guess. That's why we are traveling, normal travelers, not tourist shit. So we are seeking for good people, good communication, very sophisticated, sometimes chill. Just want to chill out, smoke some, bamboo. Yeah, by the way, in Russian, smoke bamboo means doing nothing, wasting your time.
You guys actually have a phrase, smoke bamboo?
Yeah,
I gotta use that one, man.
yeah.
How do you say it, man? How do you say it?
Kurin bamboo.
Kurin bamboo.
It's like you're doing nothing, you're like wasting your time or something. Just have a leisure. But yeah, this diversity in Taiwan, such a mysterious place. I know it's not safe to travel now, but definitely in the future, I'm going to the south, of China, actually Guangdong province. So I'm gonna be able to see Shenzhen, hopefully to swim in the ocean there. So I'm gonna see how that works.
It's gonna be awesome.
Gonna go
It's a
to
pretty interesting place, I hear.
yeah.
Shenzhen is like one of the fastest developing cities in the world, isn't it? Or something. I've heard it's a very interesting
Yeah,
place.
exactly. But I'm guess it's not gonna be that much of a difference in terms of it's still gonna be China. So I'm gonna try to look for people.
Yeah,
And,
I think it'll be better, man. I think it'll be better because remember, we were always saying we thought this China was so bad experience, but then we started realizing wait a minute, maybe it's just Hangzhou. Maybe Hangzhou is
Exactly.
just boring.
Yo, that's definitely it's like rules are so strict. And my friend professor, he's still there. I mean, not in Hangzhou, but in Huizhou, Guangdong province, that region. So it's much loose than here. So I gotta say that I've been judging China just based on this one city, and it's gonna play out. I'm going for Christmas and for New Year. It's gonna be hell of a fun, So yeah, damn, China is an interesting. It's still a lot of stuff to learn about, about this country, culture. How was it like, before? Because I feel like there is still a connection between USSR and China, that old before communist China. So it's just to learn from the remnants, or rather rebels of, this past culture. So I just gotta see, I mean, statistically, there are 1.5 billion people here. They're not all idiots, right? I gotta just find somebody, And as you just pointed out, Luke, groups, you gotta find your group, basically. Tarik been saying the same thing, and now you.
Yeah, just go to events and meetups with things that you like, and then you're gonna find people with the same interests as you. That's what I did when I was in Taiwan, and never looked back, and made a lot of really good friends.
Definitely, yeah.
So, we'll start wrapping this up. We're about an hour and 30 minutes in. So one kind of final question I want to ask you is, so we're 3 language learners here on a podcast talking together about our experiences, but I want to make a pitch. I feel like, especially, maybe you can tell me, in the UK, that a lot of people aren't that interested in learning language, or a lot of people say they don't have the time or whatever. A lot of people find learning language to be too hard or whatever. How would you pitch it to someone who Yeah, who doesn't speak another language and like says they don't really want to, but you can tell they might want to. Like how would you convince them to learn?
That's a tough one. Well, I mean, inherently, I feel like if someone's not interested or doesn't want to learn, you can't force them to learn that thing. But maybe, I mean, I guess it's one of those hard things. I feel like it's hard to kind of tell people how enriching that something's going to be unless they actually have an experience of it themselves. And especially when people are in the English sphere, assuming that everything's in English, why would I bother? Everyone speaks English and whatnot. But for me, I think maybe what would be better is instead of trying to pitch language learning in general, is to try and depending on what the person's interests are, just try and pitch something that would be more in line with what they like. So if someone's really interested in like sumo or like I don't know, like anime or manga or I don't know, like Chinese philosophy or something, just try and like pitch that and be like, yo, you could understand this thing that you love so much better if you just learn a little bit of the language, and then on top of that you can go and travel, you can make friends, and it really does open a lot of doors. Like experiences that I've had from being able to speak Cantonese or Mandarin that I would never have had if I couldn't speak them. I've got some really good friends that don't speak English, and I just try to like go down that route and just try to maybe push or convince them on why they might be interested in learning a specific language based on their interests, because then at least it's more tangible to them.
Right. And do you
That's
do you think here's my final question. Do you think that language learners are actually the ones who will end up like bringing the world together in some way? I mean, that's a kind of controversial topic in some ways of like, oh, bring the world together under who, right?
It's basically like say like would language learners like witness UFO or something. A lot of them have. So.
But I mean, like, I feel like, in particular, right? I've met a lot of people who can speak multiple languages, and something I've always noticed is they're so much easier to communicate with. Like, even Luke, right? We just met for the first time today, and I feel totally comfortable talking to you. It wasn't awkward at all. There was no, like, I don't know. I feel like, yeah, we would be best friends if I was in London. Like, whereas people who only speak one language tend to be more like kind of stick with their own group in a way. Like they have their small group of friends and they don't really branch out. So do you think that like learning a language is kind of like what will eventually end a lot of problems that we have in the world in terms of like othering people?
I mean, I guess in terms of like racism and things like that, I think it would definitely have a big impact. I think that one thing I would say, I think probably the reason that I find it really easy to talk to you and other people that I've had on my channel, etc., is just because we share the same passion. So I think inevitably if you share the same passion with someone, it's going to be so easy to talk to them because you just talk about that. And for me personally, I could talk for we've been talking for an hour and a half. I could talk for another 3 hours if you wanted to. I'm not saying we will. No one wants to listen to that, but like I could. But I think other than that, I just think that I think both of you have lived in different countries and have an experience of being the outsider or being the foreigner in another country, and that really does make you a lot more empathetic to people that would be coming over to the US or Russia or the UK, and that the more different perspectives you have to look at the same thing, I think it makes you a more empathetic person in general. So whether that's looking at it through the lens of a different language, reading it from a different media, or if it's just a case of having more experiences and actually going to different countries and realizing that even some of the smallest things that you'd think would be really simple, like for me going to the shops and buying a bag of crisps, I really struggled with when I first went to Taiwan because I'd want to read the ingredients and I was like, what? I just want some crisps, man. Why is this so difficult? Because I don't eat any dairy and eggs. I was like reading the ingredients, just trying to find out, and I was like squinting at the characters, like I'd have to get my phone out and draw on Pleco, and I'm like, even the little thing is so difficult, and I think you can appreciate from other people's perspective a lot more if you've had similar experiences. So I feel like that would help, especially with empathizing a lot more with immigrants or expats and whatever.
Yeah, it reminds me. First of all, I want to ask real quick. Do you know the Polyglot Conference? Have you ever been to one, or do you? Yeah,
I
you
went
have.
to one in Ljubljana.
Oh, nice, nice. Yeah, I went to one. It was in New York, so it was right in my hometown. But it was like what 2010 or 11 or something, a while ago. But anyway, one of the key speakers, I remember he said something that has stuck with me for a long time. He was like, I realized. He said, I realized why I could never hate someone from another place again. And he was like, it's simple. It's like, how could I learn that language if I hate that person? Like, how could I figure out that complicated grammar, or like how to say the word lamp if I don't like you because of how you look? So it was like, he just made it so clear that it's like so illogical to like not like someone, or like judge them without even knowing how to speak to them first. So what you said really reminded me of that. And also, another thing is like, he also said that the main reason that most people learn a language is for love. You know. So what you talking about your girlfriend?
How we started this discussion, you know.
Yeah. Exactly.
But look, it was such a great time talking to you. You know, finally somebody who's learning like Chinese traditional, like so seriously. So to me, it was a nice encounter, you know, with a contender of mine. So my motivation got higher, it just got erected. So yeah, thanks for your time.
We still don't know whose Chinese is better, honestly. You know, I wonder.
Yo, I'm not gonna even.
No idea.
Sorry, guys. Like, that kind of content will come later. You know, battle of the language learners. That would be interesting. Honestly. I would watch that.
Yeah, the contrast battle. Yeah.
Yo, actually, that's actually a super good idea. I don't think I've ever seen that. Like a language learning competition show where people like have to like speak in different languages, and like there will be different games and puzzles. That would be interesting. I wonder if anyone's doing that.
Definitely, like a board game or something, you know.
Right? No, like word games. Like you have to say this sentence, or like charades in a foreign language. That'd be interesting. Or Mafia. Imagine Mafia playing Mafia in a foreign language.
Yeah, I mean, we gotta figure this out, you know. The contrast label will go.
I think that would be really hard. Yeah. It's like, it's weird, and I guess something that people don't appreciate if you never learned another language before is that you might be able to talk about philosophy in Chinese, but you might not know the word for shoelace because you've just never had to read it before. So, you know, like, I can imagine stuff like that would just expose like all the weak points coming out that are just words I've never seen or had to use before.
Yeah, but that's why it's a game, right? You play, you might lose, but you learn something at the end of the day, and it's fun. It's, you know.
Yeah, that's what actually dragged my attention to Tarik as we met, you know. He didn't wear any shoelaces, so I was just like, yo, how do you call the thing that you're not wearing? Oh, you just shoelaces? Yeah, alright, I got it. But yeah, it's such a great time, man. Thanks again.
Yeah, alright, Luke.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Definitely a lot of fun, so I'll be up for doing something like this again. Maybe you guys can come on my channel sometime, and we'll have to think of some questions first, and then have you guys on.
Yeah, sure, man. A lot was not said about, you know, ourselves. But yeah, thanks so much for coming, man. And we would love to have you on again in the future at some point. So we will be in touch.
Looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Right.
All right. See you later, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.